Today, let's talk about the State of Israel. Israel was established in 1948 by Jewish people, who are followers of Judaism. Their religious scripture is called the Tanakh, known as the Old Testament in Christianity. Christianity originated from Judaism and is a faith that follows the teachings of Jesus. In Christian belief, Jesus is the Messiah. According to Christian narratives, Jesus was crucified by the Jewish authorities around 30 AD in Jerusalem under Roman rule. On the other hand, Judaism rejects Jesus as the Messiah and does not acknowledge the historical claims of Christianity. They consider themselves the authentic religious tradition, especially at a time when Christianity had relatively few followers. Following the crucifixion of Jesus, Christianity experienced rapid growth, and by around 390 AD, it became the sole legal religion of the Roman Empire. This remarkable growth was partly due to Christian missionaries who spread the gospel as instructed by Jesus before his ascension. According to Christian belief, anyone who believes in Jesus, regardless of their ethnicity, can attain salvation and enter heaven after death. In contrast, Judaism did not have missionaries, and they were not inclined to propagate their faith to outsiders, so it remained largely within their own ethnic group. This divergence in religious beliefs and the historical context of Jesus' crucifixion created tension between Jewish and Christian communities. In the eyes of many Christians, Jews were often associated with the crucifixion of Jesus, leading to historical anti-Semitic sentiments and, at times, persecutions in Europe. This served as a foundation for anti-Jewish sentiments in European history. During the Middle Ages, Jewish people were known for their skills in commerce. They often lent money to kings for warfare and provided high-interest loans to the poor. For example, the character Shylock in Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice, is a typical portrayal of a Jewish person, being depicted as cunning, greedy, ruthless, and a wealthy moneylender. This portrayal was reflective of the prevailing societal perception of Jewish people at the time. In the mid-14th century, Europe was hit by the worst plague in human history, the Black Death. At the time, people believed that Jewish people were responsible for the plague. Rumor has it that Jews poisoned the well water and Jewish people had no moral advantage in society. Despite their immense wealth, they held a lowly social status. The Christian church harbored animosity towards Jewish people, while the upper class and nobility were envious of their wealth, which led to a series of persecutions against the Jewish community. After Christopher Columbus discovered the New World in the late 15th century, many Jewish people, unable to endure persecution, sought refuge in the Americas, starting new lives. This is why the United States has the second largest Jewish population in the world, after Israel. In the late 18th century, the French Revolution heralded the recognition of universal human rights in France. For the first time, French Jews were granted equal citizenship and rights. France was seen as an ideal nation for Jewish people. However, in 1895, a notorious miscarriage of justice shattered this illusion. Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish French army officer, was wrongly accused of leaking military secrets to Germany. The entire case was a fabrication, and Dreyfus was framed primarily because of his Jewish heritage. The court proceedings showed that nobody cared whether a Jewish person was wrongfully accused. Similar situations occurred in 19th century Russia, where massive anti-Jewish activities erupted, leading to the forced emigration of over 2 million Jewish people from the country. The Jewish people, who had wandered for over 2,000 years, were now urgently seeking a new homeland. In 1896, an Austrian Jewish man named Theodor Herzl published The Jewish State, introducing modern political Zionism. The central idea was to call for the establishment of a Jewish homeland. To create a nation, the first step was to find suitable land. At that time, Jewish people had three potential options: Argentina, Uganda, and Palestine. The suggestion for Argentina came from the United States at the end of the 19th century. The U.S. once proposed to Jewish people that they could establish a nation on the vast and remote Patagonian Plateau in southern Argentina. This region had an area of 630,000 square kilometers, was sparsely populated, and lacked indigenous peoples. This proposal aimed to avoid international interference and conflicts. However, when Jewish people conducted an on-site survey of Argentina, they discovered the reasons behind the absence of indigenous people. The region was characterized by high altitudes, rugged terrain, and unpredictable climate with cold winters and hot summers. Consequently, Jewish people soon abandoned the idea. The proposal for Uganda was made by the British. During this period, Uganda was a British colony. The British government offered assistance to Jewish people. making it affordable to acquire land in Uganda. The region had fertile land and a favorable climate. However, this proposal did not gain broad support because wealthy Jewish people, who primarily conducted their businesses in developed countries, found Uganda's inland location in East Africa less appealing, as it did not align with their business interests. With only Palestine as the remaining option, it became the spiritual homeland for Jewish people because it was their ancestral land. Jewish people had lived in this region for centuries, and the holy city of Jerusalem, as mentioned in the Jewish scriptures, was located in Palestine. Therefore, this proposal received widespread support from the Jewish community. This marked the beginning of Jewish immigration waves to Palestine. Up until 1914, there were two major waves of Jewish immigration, with approximately 70,000 Jewish people entering the region. However, Palestine was not unoccupied at the time. It was under the rule of the Ottoman Empire, and there was a significant Arab population, predominantly followers of Islam. In 1914, World War I broke out, and the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers, which included Germany and Austria-Hungary. In contrast, the United Kingdom, a member of the Allied Powers, sought to gain the economic support of the Jewish community and secure its interests in the Middle East. The British government publicly endorsed the Jewish aspiration for statehood and promised to assist Jewish people in establishing a nation in Palestine after the war. Many wealthy Jewish merchants provided financial support to the Allied Powers, especially to the British government, in appreciation of this endorsement. After World War I, the British took control of Palestine as a mandate. To express gratitude for Jewish support during the war, the British government permitted Jewish people to purchase property and land in Palestine. However, what Jewish people did not anticipate was that the British government had made a similar promise to the Arab population in the early stages of the war to secure their assistance in dismantling the Ottoman Empire. After the war ends, Britain will help Arabs, including Pakistan, establish their own independent country. Between 1919 and 1939, 3 waves of Jewish immigration occurred in Palestine. In 2 decades, Jewish people established communities, industries, and their own institutions, including schools and places of worship. By 1939, Jewish-owned industries comprised 80% of the Palestinian economy, and the Jewish population increased from 90,000 to 450,000. However, these developments met with opposition from the Arab population. Jewish economic ventures impacted local Arab businesses, intensifying the conflict. The situation escalated with a mixture of national, survival, and religious tensions. In 1939, the outbreak of World War II marked one of the darkest chapters in Jewish history. Throughout World War II, a total of 5.8 million Jews in Europe were killed by the Nazis. When concentration camps were liberated at the end of World War II, the world was horrified by the brutality of the Holocaust. At this time, the Jewish return to their homeland gained unprecedented international support and sympathy. Nevertheless, this didn't mean that the Arab population was willing to accept the establishment of a Jewish state. In 1945, King Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia expressed sympathy for the tragic experiences of Jewish people and supported the idea of a Jewish state. However, he argued that since it was the Germans who had persecuted the Jews after the war, a piece of German territory should be designated for Jewish people to establish their nation. Arab people had not persecuted the Jews, so why should Arab land be sacrificed for the Jews? Ibn Saud's perspective made sense, but it couldn't change the minds of various politicians. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan for Palestine, dividing it into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under UN administration. The Jewish population was generally content with this proposal, as it allocated 57% of the land to the Jewish state and 43% to the Arab state, with Jewish control over the coastal plains and Arabs receiving non-contiguous mountainous areas. However, this uneven division faced strong opposition from Arab nations. Despite this, the United Nations resolution was surprisingly passed with the combined support of the United States and the Soviet Union. On May 14, 1948, the Jewish people established their nation, Israel. The name Israel has ancient roots in Jewish legends, signifying one who wrestles with God. It was surrounded by a circle of Arab countries, and the Arab League immediately declared its refusal to recognize the legitimacy of this new state. The very next day, Israel's neighboring countries, including Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, declared war on Israel, marking the beginning of the First Arab-Israeli War. At the outset of the war, Israel, despite having its own armed forces, was at a basic guerrilla warfare level, while the Arab nations had a number of military personnel and heavy weaponry advantages. However, as the war progressed, Israel, using guerrilla tactics and with covert American assistance, managed to hold off the conflict. When a ceasefire was declared in 1949, Israel had actually gained control of more territory. Following the ceasefire, Israel had to focus on rebuilding its economy. Although Israel's resources were limited, and it had little money at the time, in 1952, Israel received substantial war reparations from Germany. This money allowed Israel to purchase a large amount of goods and production materials. Additionally, the influx of wealthy Jewish immigrants after Israel's establishment provided the country with not only capital but also crucial new technologies and industries. For instance, many Jewish immigrants arrived in Israel with expertise in diamond cutting and polishing. Typically, diamond polishing skills were passed down within family enterprises, from parents to children, establishing small-scale workshops. The Israeli government also provided relevant policy support, enabling their diamonds to be exported to global markets and establishing Israel as one of the world's top 3 diamond manufacturing centers. This became Israel's leading export industry. However, the brief ceasefire did not bring about lasting peace. In fact, the conflict between Israel and Palestine has never truly subsided. In the Third Arab-Israeli War of 1967, Israel's Air Force launched a swift 6-day campaign, defeating Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, and occupying the Gaza Strip in the process. In 1973, the Yom Kippur War erupted, involving Israel, Egypt, Syria, and other Arab states. Arab nations, angered by the US's overt support for Israel, imposed an oil embargo on countries supporting Israel. This resulted in a threefold increase in oil prices and the world's first oil crisis. Developed nations experienced economic downturns, with a 4.7% drop in the US GDP, a 2.5% drop in Europe, and a 7% drop in Japan. Israel, too, faced severe challenges due to oil shortages and the immense expenses of war. The government had to resort to borrowing and printing money, which led to hyperinflation. Over the course of a decade, prices surged by 450%. In 1984, Shimon Peres became the 8th Prime Minister of Israel and introduced a series of economic policies, including one that focused on reducing government debt. This marked the beginning of a steady decline in government debt. Government spending was cut in half over 3 years, and the central bank was granted full independence, effectively controlling inflation. Additionally, Peres convinced labor unions to cooperate in implementing price controls and allowed for currency devaluation to gain a competitive edge in exports. These policies helped Israel swiftly recover from the inflation crisis and laid a crucial foundation for its subsequent economic development. After the 1980s, many large companies emerged worldwide. Israel's ability to stand out was primarily due to its emphasis on innovation. While other countries might educate their children to grow up and pursue their dreams or explore careers they love, Jewish culture, on the other hand, places a strong emphasis on business. Parents may teach their children the ins and outs of entrepreneurship from a young age, encouraging them to choose business as their primary profession. The Israeli government also strongly encourages young people to start their own businesses. As a result, Israel earned the nickname, the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. It boasts the highest number of startups per capita in the world, with venture capital funding per capita 28 times that of the United States. Israel has the 3rd highest number of companies listed on Nasdaq, trailing only the United States and China. The Israeli government not only provides financial support to startup companies but also seeks international, professional investors to fund these startups and offer expertise. To attract investors, the government offers generous terms. If a project is profitable, investors can keep most of the profits, and if it fails, the government can cover the losses. This policy created a significant incentive for investors, leading to a large influx of investments in Israel. Between 1992 and 2000, the number of Israeli venture capital funds grew from 20 to 513, while the number of foreign banks expanded from 1 to 28. Israel now boasts over 6,000 high-tech startup companies. Once these startup companies secure funding, they are not hesitant to spend on research and development. Furthermore, Israel's strong relationship with the United States led to technology giants taking an interest in acquiring Israeli companies. This gave Israel a significant edge in high-tech industries like the internet, semiconductors, and autonomous driving. Today, Israel's key industries include military technology, medical devices, biotechnology, aerospace, and more. Despite its desert landscape and severe water scarcity, Israel has also excelled in agriculture, developing advanced irrigation technologies. Moreover, despite having a prosperous economy, Israel has not faced the issue of declining birth rates and labor shortages like some other developed countries. In fact, Jewish Israelis tend to have larger families. Israel's fertility rate is 2.9, with an average of 3 children per woman, while most developed countries struggle to maintain a fertility rate above 2. Israel's economic success is also closely tied to the assistance it receives from Western nations, especially the United States. The United States has consistently provided external aid to Israel, offering billions of dollars annually in military and economic assistance. For example, during the peak of conflicts in the Middle East in the 1970s and 1980s, the United States would provide over $16 billion in military aid to Israel in a single year. Due to Israel's ongoing conflicts with neighboring countries, it has developed its own weapons industry and has even become a major exporter of military equipment. Israel's per capita GDP stands at around $55,000, which is significantly higher than its neighbors such as Iraq, Jordan, and Turkey. Israel's per capita GDP even surpasses that of wealthy nations like Saudi Arabia and is on par with countries like the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan, approaching that of the United States. While Israel's economic achievements are impressive and multifaceted, it is important to note that its unique relationship with the United States and its specific historical and geopolitical context make replication of its success challenging for its Arab neighbors in the region.